Okay, so we're going to be doing a couple of SAT questions. This is pulled directly from the College Board question bank. Okay, so here we have a question, we have a graph, so we already know that this is a command of evidence question. Again, we're doing English section questions. So let's get right into it, shall we? So the question says, in the United States, firms often seek incentives from municipal governments to expand those municipalities. Okay, you have municipalities. You have these municipalities, okay? You're having these firms seeking incentives so that they can expand, right? So a team of political scientists, okay, they hypothesized. There's your key word right there, hypothesized that municipalities are much more likely to respond to firms and offer incentives if the expansions can be announced in time to benefit local elected officials than if they can't. Okay, so there's your hypothesis. So we're saying if it can be announced in a period of time, clearly we can see here before or after an election, there's time one, time two, only two options. In which one of these times will benefit local elected officials and they will be more likely to respond if it does benefit. The team contacted officials in thousands of municipalities inquiring about incentives for a firm looking to expand and indicating that the firm would announce its expansion on a date either just before or just after the next election. Of course, we can assume from logic that just before would be beneficial and after would not be beneficial. Now let's see what we're supposed to do. We have our data up here in the graph, and well, there you go. I think it's pretty evident already. Like, screw the hypothesis. There's like no difference. But you can already see that they're basically the same. It doesn't matter. See, because the black here is after the election, before the election. They're basically the same, so it doesn't really matter clearly. But anyway, let's see what we're supposed to do. Always look back at the question, what do they want us to do with their hypothesis? It says weaken. You're trying to find a choice that uses the data from the graph to weaken the claim, to weaken the hypothesis. Make sure you do not assume, do not make assumptions that you're always going to look for something that's going to support the hypothesis. Read the question. It's often tempting to just make assumptions because in the SAT, it tends to take the same question at the very end. The last line is the same question sentence stated in like 10 questions in a row. Okay, probably not 10 questions in a row, but you get the point. But do not assume, especially with this, it makes all the difference. Okay, so we're trying to find something that weakens the hypothesis. Well, there you go. I think it's pretty evident right now what we're looking for because we've just looked back at the graph and seen how obvious it is from the data that there is no difference. We're making this comparison. We're saying that this is the same as this is the same as this is the same as this. No matter what happens, it is always the same between the two scenarios, between the two times we've mentioned earlier. So let's look at the answer choices and find something that actually shows that there is no difference. Okay, let's read A. A large majority of the municipalities that received an inquiry mentioning plans for an announcement before the next election didn't respond to the inquiry. Without even going back to the graph, I think it's evident that this is not even helpful because, like, we're only talking about one time period. So we're talking about before the next election. What happened to this one? When we're talking about a situation, when we're talking about, for example, okay, if there's more people that voted for blue, I'm right. If more people voted for red, you're right. And then I'm looking at answer choices to show me, and like, let's say the graph shows that they're both the same, and I'm trying to make a point that they're both the same. And I'm looking at answer choices, and then one of them says, oh, a lot of people voted for red, or red did this. So what? That doesn't help me. I'm trying to make a comparison between these two, right? Similarly, in this case, we're trying to make a comparison. So clearly, A is not doing that. We don't even need to look back at the graph. So that's not what we're looking for. Okay, so let's move on to B then. The proportion of municipalities that responded to the inquiry or offered incentives didn't substantially differ. Here's your comparison across the announcement timing conditions. This is beauty. This is exactly what we're looking for. We'll obviously look through the other two to make sure, but This is exactly what we're looking for. It didn't substantially differ. We're making sure that we are making the right connection because again we're trying to weaken the claim here by saying that there is no difference. We are using the data from the graph because yes, we already established the graph shows that there is no difference. And not to mention, across the announcement timing conditions, we are making a comparison between these two. That is perfect. So I think B should be the right answer, but let's keep reading. Only around half the municipalities that responded to inquiries mentioning plans for announcement before the next election offered incentives. So it is clearly evident that we are covering everything that is needed. Okay, so we can see only around half of them. So again, there is no comparison between this and this. There is no comparison of time periods. Nothing in C says anything about there being no difference. It's not what we're looking for. Of the municipalities that received an inquiry mentioning plans for an announcement date after the next election, more than, however, this much did not respond, and only around this many offered incentives. Again, so what? This isn't what we're looking for. We're trying to find something that is going to make a comparison between these two and simply state that there was no difference. We're trying to find keywords. We're trying to find synonyms here. We're trying to find something that will say this statement. This is what we're looking for. So clearly, it is safe to say that the answer is B, and surely enough, the answer is B. Okay, within higher education, studying philosophy. Interesting. Speaking of which, actually, quick little mini advertisement, but for my own self. If you go into Minecraft, go into Hypixel. If you are a Hypixel player, if not, just ignore this. But if you are, go to a housing lobby / visit Nablus. Check out my debate housing. We do actually sometimes get into philosophical debates, but usually just general debates. So yeah, we do that for fun. So if you're interested, you can go check that out. Oh, but and by the way, sometimes we do host, and there's a Discord server for that, so you can just do this command there. That is the only way you can get the link to the Discord server, so you could go do that. Okay, anyway, back to the point. Within higher education, studying philosophy requires that students be conversant with the field's foundational texts and historical figures. Okay. By contrast, doing philosophy within or beyond the academy demands the creative, self-directed application of acquired expertise to enduring questions about the nature of existence and knowledge. Okay, while both approaches, so we're getting two approaches here. We're getting approach 1, and we have approach 2, and a statement about them. While both approaches engage with influential figures, those who do philosophy treat such figures as vital interlocutors who facilitate new insights rather than as ossified authorities who, though relevant to the present, primarily represent, the discipline's past. Interesting. What are we doing with this? Again, remember, you're trying to understand what you're going to do with this information. Based on the text, which choice best describes the relationship between studying and doing philosophy? Okay. Doing philosophy. Okay. Doing philosophy helps students formulate concrete solutions to practical issues, whereas studying philosophy prioritizes engagement with historical arguments in the field. Mm, not exactly. Doing philosophy involves developing novel ideas. Okay, that's the key part. Creative, self-directed application. Through imagined dialogue with past philosophers based on knowledge of those views acquired by studying philosophy. Yes, because you're like you're treating those figures as interlocutors who are facilitating new insights. You're imagining discussions between them to be able to get into creating new ideas. Doing philosophy requires students to challenge the ideas that are articulated by past philosophers, especially when these ideas are broadly accepted by other people studying philosophy. Not necessarily the case. Doing philosophy represents a departure from the norms that govern scholarly inquiry, whereas informing This is definitely a hard question because a lot of these answer choices seem pretty appealing, but remember this this is extremely important because it links to this. This is very important. This is why you're naturally led to answer choice B. And actually, you know what? Let's take a look at the explained rationale to help a bit more as well. Choice B is the best answer because it most accurately describes. Okay, according to the text, studying requires being familiar with foundational texts. Yeah, while doing it demands, again, this is the part that I highlighted, the creative, self directed application of acquired expertise. It implies that doing philosophy builds on knowledge gained through study. Yep, so adding new ideas. There's your this. And then here's the other part I highlighted that as dialogue partners whose ideas help generate new thinking. There you go. Exactly what I said. This links to this. So yeah, that's why answer is B. The interiors of many temples in the ancient Middle East needed to satisfy a precise set of acoustic demands. The sounds of chants, hymns, rhymes should travel with clarity. Okay, so chants with clarity. And we're talking about silences being held and deliberate. Sorry, not deliberate, appreciated. Okay, so in a research paper, a student claims there is your trigger word, immediately highlight, or yeah, you can highlight actually on test day. Immediately highlight. A student claims that the users of one such temple were aware of how the materials that were used within the structure were aware of how the materials could affect sound quality and that they deliberately applied this knowledge to influence how sound was experienced in the space. Okay, if that's not clear enough, let us just translate it. Basically, you have the space, a lot of the things in it are can affect sound quality. Let's say this causes an echo. This makes things clearer. This thing makes it louder or whatever it may be. And within this space, the people that are there are all aware, actively knowing this information, and they're using this knowledge and manipulating these different things deliberately. We have this word to be able to shape how they want the sound like the hymns and the chants and whatever it is that they're trying to do. So that's what we're looking for, right? Now, before we move on, we need to get to the point here. What I mentioned earlier at the very beginning. Read the question. Read the question. Which quotation from a work by a historian would support the child's claim? Nice. We're not weakening, we're supporting the claim this time. Okay, so many researchers believe that the central chamber of the temple had a high ceiling, a feature that has since become essential to the acoustic design of modern concert halls. That's not what we're looking for. A lot of things that are here in this claim is completely missing. Like, okay, good for you if the researchers think that this chamber had a high ceiling and this was a feature that helped it. Where is the deliberate knowledge applied in how things were experienced? Where is that deliberate act? Where is the fact that the people there back in the day were aware that the structures could affect sound quality? None of that information is here. And it's not like it is a small detail, it's something that is very important and central to the student's claim. Or not, well, yeah, student's claim. So this is not the right answer. The innermost room of the temple was likely among the quietest spaces in the interior of the temple. So what? Okay, what if it just first of all, even the aspect that the temple itself had acoustic, like acoustic related interiors, it doesn't even say anything to connect the fact that it's quiet to the acoustic nature of it, to anything. It's just saying it's quiet. That doesn't move, and not to mention, it's also missing everything I just said was missing from the previous answer choice. Everything about the deliberate act, the knowledge applied to be able to fulfill these profound silences and etc. that were mentioned in the claim. So there's so much missing from the answer choice. So this is not the answer choice either. The acoustic environment of the temple was best suited for music. Okay, and favors small, simple melodies, harmonies, rhythms. First of all, what about the profound silences that should be fully felt and appreciated? We're only covering chants and hymns now, rhythms. We're not covering silences. Secondly, again, we're just saying that the environment was best suited for that. Okay, now we're covering the information that the temples did satisfy the precise set of acoustic demands. But now we're not talking about that there's still nothing about deliberate applied knowledge, etc. That isn't the answer either. During special occasions, curtains were placed inside the temple to minimize reverberation and confine the sound to designated locations. Bingo. Literally bingo. This is exactly what we're looking for. This, like, you can literally clearly see right now. You can very clearly see during special occasions, they would take the curtains and they would put them inside because they know that if they do that, it will minimize reverberation. It will confine the sound to designated locations. Acoustic qualities right here of the curtains have acoustic qualities, so the environment does have that. That part is supported. During special occasions, were placed inside. That shows deliberate act, deliberate applications being applied of the knowledge to influence how it was experienced in the space. This is exactly what we're looking for. This is the answer that covers everything we mentioned. The previous answer choices were not doing this in any means. The most recent iteration of the immersive theater experience, Sleep No More, okay, which premiered in New York City in 2011, okay, transforms. Okay, by the way, when we're reading this kind of thing, one of the things that make these English questions so hard is the fact that they put a lot of fluff in it. That is to say, they'll be like, "Hi, my name is John, which is a common name, dash, and I like cats, dash, which are a very common pet, dash," and they keep making the point, and then my favorite color is blue, dash, which is like there's these dashes and these commas and these brackets and this extra information that I will guarantee you right now, 99% of the time, you don't even need any of that. It's just wasting your time. It's just confusing you in the sentence. This is actually more at a detriment, actually, when it comes to the grammar questions, because it comes to a situation where if you like, you could have known what the answer was if you were reading it without the fluff in the middle. So anyway, my point is, of course, read it. I'm not saying ignore it every time because sometimes they are important. Maybe you genuinely don't know what a thing is, so you do need that clarification. But I'm just saying, when read it the first time, all the way through. Second time, just literally visually like remove it from your face and just get to the point. The most recent iteration of the immersive theater experience, Sleep No More, transforms its performative space into a 1930s era hotel. So much more easy to read than all of this extra fluff here. Okay, so okay, we have this theater experience. Okay, made it into a hotel. Okay, nice. Audience members who wander through the labyrinthine. Okay, here we have a phrase, sorry, not a phrase, a word that seems to, like, I don't know, a maze or something that is hard to go around. Okay, venue at their own pace. So audience members are going through this maze-like thingy, venue at their own pace, and follow the actors as they play out simultaneous interweaving narrative loops. So these actors are going through this plot line and this plot line and whatever and this thing happened and whatever simultaneously, and this audience is following them around at their own pace. Okay? They're confronting the audience. Again, you're having this confusion, right? Actors as they play out simultaneous interweaving narrative loops. Who's confronting? Don't forget. Don't lose sight of what you're talking about. The actors confront the impossibility of experiencing the production in its entirety. I think that's pretty clear from what we're saying. It's hard to follow, basically. The play's refusal of narrative coherence, a coherent narrative. A, B, C, D, not A, D, C, B all at the same time. Their refusal to follow a classic narrative coherence hinges on the sense of spatial fragmentation that the venue's immense, intricate, labyrinth, maze like, we're getting this lexical field here, layout generates. Okay, so again, now you're asking yourself the question, what am I exactly looking for then? What we are looking for is which answer choice is showing that, like, what does the text actually what is the text trying to say about this theater's use of performative space? What about it? What is going on? What is this text trying to tell me exactly? The choice of a New York City venue likely enabled the play's creators to experiment with the use of theatrical space in a way that venues from earlier productions could not. It's kind of beyond the text. It's kind of just not what we're looking for. Why are we talking about earlier productions? Nothing really hints at that, I guess. Like, no one really, that's not the point of the text. When you're saying that it's a New York City venue, the fact that it's a New York City venue, that doesn't really necessarily say anything. It's not that it's in New York that it's going to change anything. It's just a fact given here. It doesn't mean that that is why it enabled everything else to follow. That is not true. So I don't think it's A. Audience members likely find the experience of the play disappointing because they generally can't make their way through the entire venue. That's a pretty good trap answer. I mean, it is trapping us into thinking because, like, we have this lexical field I was mentioning. It's a maze, it's hard to get through, it's confusing. But again, audience members likely finding it disappointing because they can't make it, like, through the whole thing. That doesn't necessarily, like, no one, like, nothing in the text says that the audience is disappointed, that the audience is unhappy, that the audience is not enjoying it. It doesn't really say that anywhere, so it is beyond the text technically to make that statement. So it's not B. The production's dependence on a particular performance environment would likely make it difficult to reproduce exactly in a different theatrical space. Hold on, let me read that again. The production's dependence on a particular performance environment, again, you have this labyrinth like maze like place, and they're doing everything there, would likely make it difficult to reproduce exactly in a different theatrical space. I think that is fair enough to say because you have this first sentence that is talking about the specific transformation that happens in their space into a different specific type of area, a 1930s era hotel looking place, and it's labyrinthine and immense, intricate, etc. But it's very specific, it seems, and considering its confusion, it does seem like it would be pretty difficult to reproduce. I'd say this is okay. Let's take a look at D. Audience members who would navigate the space according to a recommended itinerary will likely have a better grasp of the play's narrative than ones who depart from that itinerary. I mean, as much as this seems pretty logical in general in life, nothing in the text has anything to do, like, nothing in the text says this. Nothing even hints at this. It just says it's hard. It doesn't say that there's anything that is, like, it nothing says any of this. So this is beyond the text completely. Like, nothing in this text is mentioning anything about if they had a guide, if they had a this, if they had a that, it would have been easier. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Not to mention that the confusion lies not only in the way, like, that the place is made, it's also in the fact that it is played simultaneously. Spatial fragmentation. There is no narrative coherence. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm able to follow the actors properly if the actors are all doing three different, like, periods of time in a story all at the same time. That's not going to do anything whether I'm able to follow them or not. So that doesn't even make much logical sense. Maybe a better grasp, okay, but it's not a good answer choice. The answer choice would then be C.